Am I the arsehole for asking my mum to come round so that I can take a shower? Story time. So my husband Steve and I had a baby 2 weeks ago. Our baby is strictly breastfed and gets very, very fussy when I'm not near her. So there isn't really much I can do without her being with me. More often than not, I'm completely fine with that. One thing this does mean is that I just never get to shower by myself. I think I've managed to have one shower in these whole 2 weeks without her. And the soap was barely lathered before she started crying again. And that was when my husband brought her into me and was like, deal with this. The whole thing maybe lasted like 2 or 3 minutes. And with that being said, Steve hasn't had to change his life at all. My guy is thriving. Every morning and evening, this man is taking like 30 to 60 minute showers. Which, what are you doing in the shower to start with for that long? Because I know it's not an everything shower, Steve, so. And he just is not understanding the frustration I have towards these uninterrupted showers. All a girl wants is to sit in the shower, relax. I might even sit down, who knows? And if I'm feeling really crazy, I'm gonna shave my legs. So now when Steve brings me the baby, he thinks that she stops crying because it's the water that calms her down. Not, you know, my gorgeous motherly presence or anything. Got a fresh brush. So I get his thought process, but unfortunately, Steve, you are just wrong. And he doesn't even put any effort into fixing the issue himself. So the other day, I was literally at my wit's end. I was calling for back. So I called my mum and asked her if she would come and watch the baby whilst I had a shower. She was more than obliging. I'm not gonna lie, I really needed to shave my legs at this point. I had been trying for the past 5 days and I'd only managed to do a little bit, so I was living like a patchy little mess. Ladies, it is important to take care of yourself, even when you need to take care of someone else. To rub salt in the wounds, my husband was actually home when I asked mum to come over. So he heard the phone call. So mum comes over and watches baby whilst I jump in the shower. Steve comes in and is like, why is your mum here? He's like, oh, I just needed to shower without having the baby handed off to me midway through. I needed a bit of me time. Oh my god, this bronzer is so pigmented. Steve was not a happy bunny when I said this. He thinks I should have voiced my opinions better. Steve, I think you need to have a long hard look at yourself. Now he thinks that I'm in the wrong because I was petty and invited my mum over. But unfortunately, I am really struggling to see how this is my fault. Please do let me know if you think I'm in the wrong here. And if I'm not, let me know what I can do.
Imagine being a high school student working part-time at a yogurt shop, going into work one day with your best friend, and neither of you ever making it home. On December 6, 1991, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas puts on her uniform and heads to work at I Can't Believe It's Yogurt in Austin, Texas. She's working with her friend Jennifer Harbison. On that night, it was just the two of them working and the shop closed at 11 p.m., so they were fairly optimistic that it was going to be a breeze, especially because 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, Jennifer's little sister, and her friend, 13-year-old Amy Myers, stopped by after the mall to hang out and help the girls close up faster so they could catch a ride home after. Amy and Sarah stayed in the back doing dishes and hanging out as they weren't technically employees, while Eliza and Jennifer stayed in the front. The girls started cleaning up early while Eliza checked out last-minute customers at her register. A woman comes into the shop to pick up some froyo on her way home for her husband and stops abruptly when she notices two other customers in the shop sitting at a table, facing each other. These two men weren't eating anything, but they were focused on a sack between them. One of them has his hand in the sack and is rolling around something inside of it. She almost asked the girls if they were okay with these guys, but they seemed fine as they were joking around and talking to each other, so she convinces herself that it's all good and leaves. Another couple comes in right before closing and also notices the two guys with the sack sitting at the booth closest to the register. They sit down and eat, and the woman starts eavesdropping on Eliza and Jennifer's conversation. That's when she notices that the two men seem to also be eavesdropping. Around 10:47 p.m., the couple leaves and the two men stay. At 10:50, per store policy, the girls were supposed to lock the door from the inside so no new customers could walk in while they finished up closing tasks. At this point, all the chairs are up on the booths except for one. No one knows exactly what happened in those next 13 minutes, but at 11:03 p.m., Eliza's register marks a no-charge sale which opened the cash register drawer. Around $500 in cash was taken, but that wouldn't be the only thing that would be taken that night. Around an hour later, a police officer notices smoke coming from the shopping center where the yogurt shop is located. When the fire department gets there, they see the whole establishment up in flames. Initially, they think a stove was left on and a fire started, but there were no stoves in the yogurt shop. When firefighters went in, they had no idea what they were walking into or that it was a crime scene. If they had known, they might have been able to preserve more evidence, and admittedly they would have done things differently. As they moved through the store, fighting off the flames and barely being able to see, they noticed something. A foot. Charred black. Then they see a second body, and a third, and then a fourth. They immediately knew something was wrong when they see all four girls' bodies nude, stacked, and bound. A detective named John Jones is immediately called to the scene. When he arrives, he's shocked to see the girls' bodies had been burned so badly that they had melted and become part of the floor that they were laid on. They were all found in the back of the store, except for the youngest of the girls, Amy, who was towards the front of the store and the least burned. She was what gave detectives the first indication that assault had happened, as there was an ice cream scoop pointed up towards her pelvic bone. Before the girls could be transported for autopsies, assault kits were performed on them on the scene, which usually is against protocol, but the detectives in charge were adamant on breaking the protocol and didn't want to lose or contaminate any evidence during the transport. However, there was a lot that wasn't done correctly with this case, and what was found when the autopsies were done on the girls' bodies was shocking and gruesome. In December 1991, when the bodies of 4 young teen girls were found bound, gagged, and stacked in a yogurt shop in Austin, Texas, there was a lot of pressure on everyone investigating on what happened. At this time, Austin was a small town without much major crime. The crime scene tech at the time didn't have much experience with arson. The bathroom wasn't dusted for fingerprints, a lot of items weren't saved that were found in the back with the girls, and many people weren't wearing booties walking around on the crime scene. Would any of this help in finding their killers? Maybe, maybe not, but we'll never know for sure. The medical examiner determined that some of the girls had been assaulted, but their bodies were burned so badly that they couldn't determine if it had happened to all of them. They had all also been shot with a .22 in the head except for Amy, the youngest, only 13, and the least burned body. She, unlike the other girls, had been shot twice. Once on the side of the head, but when that didn't kill her, a second larger caliber weapon was used to shoot her again. She also had a bruise under her chin, indicating that she had been struck, and she had also been strangled before her life was ended. They can't tell if she was singled out for some reason, or if all the girls were tortured this way before their death as their bodies were burned so badly. A lot of the crime scene details weren't released in the earlier days. However, the facts were slowly leaked. Surprisingly, there were over 300 suspects and people who came forward to confess to this crime, but none of them turned out to be legit. A week after the crime, a young boy named Maurice Pierce is arrested for possession of a .22, the same type of weapon that was used in the crime. He points his finger at his friend Forrest Welburn, saying that he was the one who committed the crime after borrowing the weapon from him that night of the murders. However, Welburn stated that him, Pierce, and 2 other boys, Michael Scott and Robert Springsteen, weren't even in town that night. Pierce's statements also didn't correlate with anything that happened that night of the murders, so they were let go. Weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. By 1999, 3 of the 4 boys had confessed to the yogurt shop murders, but there was never any physical evidence or witnesses that tied them to the scene. It turns out that there was a lot of coercion and falsified statements from detectives against these men, and their charges were dropped after DNA testing proved none of them were there. The people who had seen the 2 men in the yogurt shop that night stated that they looked like they didn't belong there or in that area. A partial DNA profile was found, but it only had 16 markers, meaning it could belong to thousands of men. It's enough to eliminate potential suspects but not identify one. In 2017, detectives submitted the sample into a database that matched an unidentified individual whose corresponding sample was provided by the FBI. But that individual's identity was never revealed and no arrests have been made. In 2022, Congressman Michael McCall cited the yogurt shop murders when introducing the Homicide Victims Family Rights Act, a bill that allows for federal review and renewed investigation of cases that have gone cold for at least 3 years. It's been over 30 years. This case is still cold, but hopefully one day, justice will be served.
Am I the astronaut for disowning my wife's daughter after she chose her mom's affair partner over me? I, 35 male, met my now soon-to-be ex-wife, 33 female, during uni 12 years ago. She already had a kid when she was 19, but the dad left as soon as she started uni. We were dating for 3 months before I met her daughter, Lisa. I remember seeing her family for the first time. I was nervous meeting her parents, but when I saw a little girl beside her mom, I was confused. I asked her if that was her little sister or a cousin of hers, and her answer shocked me when she told me that's her daughter. I thought I misheard her or something. At first, I wanted to dump her for hiding something so crucial from me, but she kept on begging for me to stay, and eventually I relented, and soon I started to fall in love with her daughter and wanted to be her father figure. Our bond grew stronger over the years, and in early 2019, before the pandemic hit, we got married. In late 2021, I adopted Lisa, and in early 2022, my wife gave birth to our son, Mark. After my son was born, my wife made the choice to stay at home for the time being, and I was completely fine with that. Everything was going perfectly until a few months ago I started noticing my wife increasingly spending time with her friends. At the time I didn't say anything since in my mind being at home all day was probably eating at her and I didn't want to seem controlling. The thing that made me suspicious was her constant texting and going out of the room for calls. She never did that for anyone besides this one friend of hers. I asked her about it, but she gave me some vague answers about gossip. The moment that took it too far was when I came home last week and saw her outside talking on the phone. This wasn't out of the ordinary. I remember seeing my son on the floor crying alone. I was pissed at my wife for just leaving him alone in the house, but when I went to pick him up and smelt a horrible stench coming from him, I was beyond furious. His diaper seemed like it hadn't been changed since that morning. I quickly changed his diaper and rushed outside with him in my arms. I was beyond pissed. I snatched her phone from her hand and bolted back inside. I locked my wife outside to have a talk with this friend of hers alone. I had my suspicions about who it really was, and when I heard a male voice calling out her name and asking who was there, I immediately knew what was going on. He ended the call as soon as he heard my voice. I then proceeded to lock the front door to make sure my wife couldn't enter the house at all and proceeded to screenshot as much of their chat as I could and then sent them to myself before deleting them on her phone. About 5 minutes later, she was still banging on the glass door leading to the backyard. I reluctantly opened it and was met with a smack in the face. Remember, all of this is happening while I'm holding my toddler in my arms. As soon as she realized what she just did, she apologized profusely, started crying, and tried to hug me. I pushed her away and told her to meet me at the dining table. I told my daughter to quickly take care of the baby so me and her mom could have a quick chat. I just kept it simple. I told her this was her only chance to even have a sliver of a chance of getting me back. If she effed up this talk, it was over on the spot. No lies, nothing. She kept on trying to apologize and to say it wasn't that serious. I reminded her that she not only me over, she also could have easily done serious harm to our son by leaving him alone in the house like that. I then simply asked who, for how long, and did they sleep together. She replied with her ex-boss Daniel, 6 months, and she didn't answer the last one, so I kept on reminding her that this was her last chance. She then just simply nodded. I then asked her if they used protection. To this, she started crying and started begging me for forgiveness. She said she would block him then and there and would never contact him again. I could sleep with any woman that I want from now on, yada yada. I guess Lisa heard the commotion and came downstairs. I told her to go back up, but she just walked to my wife and asked her if I knew about Daniel. Up to this point, I was calm, but upon hearing this, I swear even I started tearing up. I asked Lisa if she knew all along, and she said yes. At this point, I'm full on crying, and I asked her why she didn't tell me. She responded with, because unlike you, Daniel buys me the things that I want without having to beg. I then asked her how could she possibly could do this to her dad. She responded with the "you're not my real dad" crap. My wife screamed at her upon hearing what she said. At that point, I couldn't bear any of this anymore. I just grabbed my son and got into the car. Me and my son are currently staying at my parents' house. I've basically been drinking myself to sleep every day. Thanks to the saint of a mother I have, my son is being taken care of right now. I'm beyond hurt. I've canceled my ex-daughter's private school tuition and all of her extracurricular activities, and I've contacted a divorce lawyer. He's going to serve my wife this Friday. My wife and Lisa have been blowing up my phone nonstop with apologies. I simply responded with, get a lawyer and tell that ungrateful thing of yours to start calling Daniel her dad. I'm disowning her. And then I blocked my wife. I didn't respond to Lisa, I just simply blocked her. I guess my wife told our friends what she and Lisa did, and now they have been texting me nonstop. They understand how I'm feeling, but believe I'm going too far by divorcing my wife without hearing her out. Do they? They also keep telling me that disowning Lisa is definitely going too far and that she's only a kid and didn't understand what she was doing. I just can't get over the things she told me. I've worked my ass off to give my wife and daughter luxuries I could have only dreamed of as a kid, and now this is how I get paid back. This is the thanks I get. Okay. Lisa, 13 years, is old enough to understand that hiding her mom's affair is bad and purposely used the words to hurt me. But a part of me believes that there is still hope. A few family counseling sessions later, and we can go back to living the life I once considered a fairy tale. I'm beyond destroyed by this whole situation. A part of me just wants to see them burn in hell, but the other part of me believes there's still hope. Am I really going too far? Is there still hope? Am I the astronaut for disowning my daughter and divorcing my wife?
Do you ever get caught by your parents and just stay traumatized for the rest of your life? So, I was 13, and we all know that age is so rotten, and I was just starting to realize things. I remember around that time, I was really, really obsessed with fan fictions, and I would just read the nastiest shit you could possibly imagine about, like, you know, the celebrities. And my parents were always, like, very restrict on, like, using my phone, especially when it was, like, school year. They would just take my phone away, but for some reason one year they didn't. And not only I was like reading a lot of fan fictions, I was also very into anime hentais. So one day, because I didn't have internet, I decided to download the fan fiction on my mom's phone and then transfer it to my own phone. Does that make any sense? So I was this close to like get the whole thing done, and then put my mom's phone down and pretend like I didn't do anything until she saw me and she was like, "What the fuck are you doing with my phone?" And I ran away to my room, closed the door, sat behind it, and she was just banging on the door to like get the phone back. Now, there are so many things I could have done. I could have just lied to her and be like, yeah, I'm just doing this, I don't know, school project and I don't have internet. I could have just been like, yeah, I'm like downloading this game. And I could have done so many things. But instead, I decided to act a fool and expose myself in front of her when I could have just saved the situation. So she yelled from the other side and she was like, if you do not open this fucking door, I'm gonna break it. So I opened the door, she got the phone, and she saw that I was transferring some files. So I only had some fan pictures in her phone, and she went through the files, she opened them, she was reading them, and she was like, what in the hell is this? Like, what kind of source, what are you even reading? Like, what is this? And she said, give me your phone so I can check your phone too. And what I had forgotten was that I had screenshotted so many hentai pictures off of Google. Yeah, she basically took the phone, unlocked it, and she went through the files, she went through the gallery, and the first pics of my screenshot files were not, they were like normal pics, okay? She checked the whole like photo section. She was this close to closing the app that her hand just, it got reversed and she clicked on the screenshot folder and there was it. It was all hentai, disgusting pictures, and she was just like, I swear to God, that silence and that look on her face lasted for like 15 minutes. And I just wanted the earth to like open up, swallow me in. And you know what the worst part is? Those hentai pics weren't like normal hentais, like the big boobs and the stuff. They were gay hentais. The honey heart is, I didn't even know what being gay was. Like, I didn't even know what that was called. So, my mom managed to sit me down, and she was like, listen, this is haram. And she managed to tell me this whole story of, loot. The story of loot. If you know, you know. And so after that, I was traumatized, I was scared, and my parents just kept checking my phone like every week. And that was an experience that I wish I hadn't experienced.
How are you gonna talk bad about me in front of me in Spanish? This isn't even the first time that this has happened, which is really unfortunate. So I guess I'll tell you another example of when this happened. I was basically in the bathroom, you know, in a stall or whatever, and I hear two girls, like, outside, like, by the sinks, talking bad about me, and, like, making fun of my TikToks, and, like, mocking me, and saying all this stuff in Spanish. And then, like, whatever, I, like, go out, and I go and wash my hands, and one of the girls was in front of the sinks. So I'm like, hey, like, excuse me, like, I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just like, hey, excuse me, like, can I use the sink? And she's like, yeah, whatever. So, like, whatever, I start washing my hands, and they're still talking about me, but they're doing it in Spanish, like, thinking that I don't understand. And they're like, oh, like, she thinks she's all that just because she has a couple followers on TikTok. Like, is she really gonna, like, just move me out of the way like that? Like, I just asked if I could use the sink, and I was just kind of whatever. I kind of just walked out and, like, let it be. But today I was basically in one of my classes, and this person mentions how I have TikTok, and I really don't say anything about it. I have only spoken Spanish once before in that class, and that's when I was sending a voice message to my mom to try and, like, explain something to her. But other than that, like, I really don't speak Spanish in that class because I have no one to speak Spanish to. So whatever, this kid mentions that I have TikTok, And then this girl, I kid you not, she literally starts slandering me in Spanish right in front of me. Like, she was less than 5 feet away. And she was just, like, saying all sorts of stuff. Like, oh, like, how many followers does she even have? Like, are you even a fan of her? Like, just saying, like, a bunch of, like, foul things. And just, like, absolutely, like, trashing on my videos, being like, she's so cringe, like, why would she even post that? That's so awful. And keep in mind, like, I've been really nice to this girl before. I've always been really nice to her. I don't know why she felt the need to just... And I don't know, when stuff like that happens, I just have the strong urge to, like, go up to the person and just be like, hey, like, I really like your outfit, I really like your hair, but in Spanish, just so they know. I just don't get it, because, girl, how are you gonna talk bad about me in my first language? Like, be so serious. And this reminds me of this one time that I was in the hallway, and there's these, like, 3 girls standing by the door, and I really needed to get by, so I was like, hey, like, excuse me, can you guys move? Like, I really need to get to class. Like, I was being really polite about it, as you should be, and they would not move. Like, they were just having a full-on conversation in the middle of the hallway. They would not move, so I just, like, shoved my way past. I didn't even push them or anything. I just kind of wiggled my way past. This girl calls me the B word in Spanish. She literally looks at her friend and she goes, that bleep just pushed me out the way. I didn't even push you out the way. I said, excuse me, multiple times, and even then, I wiggled my way past. I found a way through. So I kid you not, I turn around, I look at her, and I literally look at her and I go, hablo español. She looks at me and she goes, I'm so sorry, like, I swear I didn't mean it, like, I'm so sorry.
Why you should not get LASIK. As someone who got LASIK 3 years ago, that is one of my biggest regrets in life. So I went to my LASIK consultation. They told me I was a good LASIK candidate. So the day before the surgery, it's a cold, windy day, and I go in to get my eye tested, and they tell me that my corneas are looking a little thin that day. They tell me this can happen with cold weather, and I don't think much of it, and she said we'll test again right before surgery just to make sure your eyes are okay. The day of my surgery, they test my eyes, and what do you know, my corneas are looking nice and plump, and sure enough, it was just the weather, and doctor agreed everything is good to go for LASIK, so we proceed. So a little backstory, I was a candidate for PRK and for LASIK. I could have gotten either. PRK, if you don't know, it's a longer recovery, same results, cheaper in price, but again, longer recovery, so I didn't want to go that route. The surgeon that I went to was in Pensacola, Florida, which is where I used to live, and he had been doing LASIK since LASIK came out, and great reviews, really nice doctor. Like, I didn't have any issues with him. So it's the day of my surgery, my eyes look good, I go ahead and I get my surgery done, which if you've ever had LASIK, then you know it is just really uncomfortable. You're awake the whole time. It maybe takes like 2 minutes to do both eyes, 2 to 3 minutes. You can smell like the burning of your eye, and it's really just kind of not a good time. So I get home and you can't see. It feels like someone literally took sand with your eyes open and rubbed sand on your eyes. Like, it was not a fun experience. So they basically tell you when you get home, just go to bed for the entire night. And I was done, I think, at like maybe 5 or something, and I just went home and I slept. So when I woke up the next morning, my eyes, still kind of felt like crap, but I could see a little bit, although I did kind of notice one eye was blurrier than the other. Expressed my concern with my doctor in my post-op visit. He was like, totally normal, this happens, no big deal. Let's, check you in like another month. A month goes by and my left eye, it's like perfectly crisp and clear, but my right eye is still blurry. I can see out of it, but it is just not as clear as my other eye. So my next appointment, they say, oh, this is normal. It can take up to a year for your eyes to heal. But as time goes by, my right eye, it never adjusts and it never gets better. So I end up moving back to Indiana shortly after my LASIK procedure, and I just kind of hope that my eyes get better. So after LASIK, I noticed that I see halos at night when I drive, and it makes driving at night extremely hard. So fast forward 3 years, I now have glasses to drive at night, which is great. On top of the halos, which is pretty common, I guess, with LASIK from other people I've talked to, I also have extremely dry eyes. Like, my eyes, especially in the winter, they feel like just And I am not someone who has ever had dry eyes in my entire life. And if you didn't know, when you get LASIK, you have up to a year to do a corrective procedure if needed at no extra cost to you. So it'd be free of charge. So you bet your butt I was trying to go back to Florida to get that free corrective procedure to fix my eye that didn't heal and was still blurry. I scheduled an entire trip to get this taken care of, to get this done. And whenever I arrived, they tested my eyes and they were like, ooh, this doesn't look good. And I'm like, uh-oh. So they get the doctor looks at it, and the doctor is like, yeah, your corneas have thinned a lot. And apparently my corneas thinned so much that I was no longer a candidate for a corrective LASIK procedure. So basically, I have to live with my eye that is blurry, or get glasses or contacts to fix it. So the icing on the cake is that I have to have my eyes tested every single year because there's a 50-50 chance that I could possibly develop ectasia, which is basically where your corneas progressively thin. And if they thin too much and you don't treat it, you can go blind. I know so many people, including my sister, who have had LASIK and have had zero complications. Zero. But for me, I am like the less than 3% that had complications. So with every single surgery, you just have to understand the risks. If I could go back in time, there's no way in hell I would ever do LASIK again. The gift of sight is such a beautiful gift. So please, if you're considering it, just take caution.
Am I wrong for getting involved in my best friend's marriage? Story time. So here is the important background. My best friend Amy has a husband called Steve, and they have 2 children together. Steve convinced Amy to be a stay-at-home mom, sell her business, be reliable on him. I'm gonna get the red flags out. Said it would be really, really good for the children. So I went round to Amy's house not that long ago, and I realised that she was not having a good time mentally. Me and the girls put some money together for her birthday, and we booked her and her husband a spa weekend so they could both have time to relax together. And we said that we would be the ones to watch the babies. So the kids were all staying around my house, and on the Thursday evening I was preparing for them to come over. And that was when Amy rang me, literally holding back the tears, bless her. She was saying that she was so grateful for the spa weekend, but she won't be able to go anymore. I was like, girl, why? Talk to me, what's the issue? And she was like, oh, one of Steve's friends came into town, so they're gonna spend the weekend together. Right, okay, well, we're going to talk about that. This is when she divulged to me that he hadn't been doing any housework. She had literally been doing everything, and this was literally not the vibe. Nobody treats my girl like that. Not even Steve. When she had raised this issue with Steve, he was like, why should I do anything? You're a stay-at-home mum. That is literally your whole job. I was disgusted. So I convinced her to drop the kids off with me still, and I told her to call one of her friends and her and a friend could go to the spa instead. When she dropped the kids round, I was like, listen girl, you need to tell me where this man is. I will see to this myself. Through gritted teeth, she told me that he was at the bar. She went to the spa, I went to the bar. Here's where I might be in the wrong. So I walk into the bar and I find where Steve and all of his friends are sat. I walk over to them and ask Steve, and I quote, did your mother fail you? Or was it your father? Because I'm sure they'll be so glad to know how much you're failing as a partner and as a dad. Long story short, I absolutely humiliated him. In the process, somehow managed to get myself banned from the bar. Amy is saying that she's now going to move in with her parents when she gets back from the spa weekend. And Steve is blaming me for the breakdown in his marriage. So what do you think? Should I have stayed out this one?
Get ready with me while I explain what happened between me and my ex. Me and Preston have been friends since 2nd grade, and I've always thought that I've known everything about him and he knew everything about me, but clearly that wasn't true. There were many red flags in our relationship. For some background, Preston has been involved in gymnastics since he was 5, and he quit before high school. After he quit, he kind of took some break years and then he joined cheer. I did not really see it as a red flag because he's been in gymnastics for so long and it just seemed like something common. So many people on the TikTok I made said that it was so obvious, which I definitely could see in the video, but because he did cheer, I didn't really question it. Everything kind of went down the day of prom when I got sent a picture of him and one of his friends together. I'm not really gonna get into what I mean by that, but When I received the picture, everything kind of clicked. Now, during our relationship, Preston and his friend in the picture had hung out a lot because his friend had a hot tub and they were close friends, and like it was a fun thing to do, which I thought was normal. Now, where it gets messy is I would ask Preston if I could come join them in the hot tub. Preston always told me that I couldn't come because his friend didn't like me, but now I'm thinking it was more than that. Apparently, Preston and this guy are dating now, which just like absolutely shocks me. Looking back at everything now, it seems obvious, but I never thought Preston would do something like this to me. But yeah, that's really all. Thank you guys so much for all the nice comments.